Hey everyone! One of the best things that you can do before you even think about tackling your health goals is to make sure that you plan and prepare ahead of time. And in order to do that, you need to get down and dirty in your kitchen and clean out your pantry. This is where some of the most dangerous ingredients are lurking. All kinds of chemicals and processed junk tends to live in the pantry. So today I'm going to show you inside my pantry, which truthfully, I just cleaned out, so that way you can kind of see how I organize things. Now, I like to keep my pantry really simple. All too often, too much stuff gets crammed in there and you don't even know what you have. A general rule, which of course has some flexibility to it, is if it lives longer on a shelf than you live, then chances are you don't want to eat it. So let's go through my pantry and I'm going to show you a few things that are okay living on the shelves of your pantry. So first and foremost, let's start with my top shelf. Now, I tend to buy some of my grains in bulk, and often I'll buy nuts in bulk. And another thing that I like to do is I like to keep everything in a clear container. That way it's visual, you know what it is, and notice all of these things up here have one ingredient. If things have one ingredient, you know that they're safe. For example, here I have brown rice, I have black rice and lentils, I have steel cut oats, which I love to throw in the crock pot, and then I have walnuts, which my husband eats by the handfuls, so we buy those in bulk. I also have quick cook steel cut oats for the last minute. And while I'm not a huge fan of boxed cereals, there are some good ones out there. My general rule with this is just keep 1 or 2 boxes and always make sure that they have less than 15 grams of sugar, some protein, and high fiber. The more protein and the more fiber you have, the better when it comes to breakfast cereals. This is another thing, San Pellegrino, really great. Sometimes you feel like having a cocktail. Well, sometimes a glass of sparkling water in a wine glass will do the trick. So I always have this on hand. Plus, it's a nice thing to offer guests when they come over. Another interesting thing that you'll find in my pantry is I always have a selection of sushi wraps, whether it be rice, soy wrap paper, or the seaweed paper. And this is what I like to use instead of bread for my sandwiches. Even though I still do eat some sprouted grain bread and also sourdough bread, I prefer to put most of my things in wraps. So I always have those on hand. Moving down to the next shelf, I keep a huge selections of olive oils and vinegars. These are always going to be your safe bets. Make sure that your olive oils are 100% olive oil and not a mixture or diluted with any other kind of vegetable oils, because those can cause inflammation in your body. Now, these are great because you can use them on vegetables, salads. You can even drizzle them over your meats. A great way to add flavor to your food without adding chemicals, preservatives, and calories. Another thing that I like to do here, I'm a huge fan of jars. Again, simple way to keep everything visual, and this is kind of basically like my little salad bar here. I usually keep some kind of raw nuts and seeds, and again, not a ton. You don't need to eat handfuls of trail mix, very high in calories, so keep a small portion of it, and that way you're more prone to eat a small portion. I have dried cranberries here, again, perfect to sprinkle on top of a salad. Sunflower seeds, I always buy slivered almonds and toast them up, but you can see when they're in a nice little jar, it's just so much more organized than having a bunch of plastic bags in your cabinet. I always have quinoa, I have some sea salt here, some psyllium husks, and then I also have manuka honey and cocoa nibs. So a lot of these things are just super simple, and I use manuka honey a lot in a glass of warm water late at night if I'm craving something snacky or sweet. Sometimes that'll do the trick. Of course, I've got my Skinny, can't live without that. Everybody should always have Skinny. I actually prefer to drink my Skinny at room temperature rather than drink it extra cold. I know that's a total personal preference, but a lot of times when you're snacky or you're hungry and the first thing you do is open up the pantry door, this might do the trick. If you're not genuinely hungry and you just need to kill the cravings, this guy will help. In terms of crackers, you'll notice one thing that you do not see very much of in my pantry, and it's anything that has white flour in it. I tend to stay away from processed white flour products. So instead, I have a small selection here of like the Rosemary raisin crackers, and these I've had in there forever. It's, again, just great if guests come over, if you're just looking for something really simple, but I don't keep a big ton of them on hand. Going down to the next shelf, this is my favorite shelf, and everybody in my family knows don't mess with my superfood shelf. So here on this shelf, I'll keep everything from green tea, my matcha green tea. I keep chia seeds. This is kind of the latest addition, is my bee pollen, and I just put a little bit of this on salads. I have my collagen protein and just a whole assortment of random things. A lot of this stuff, like this one, is a blend of chia and flaxseed. I'll just sprinkle a little bit on top of my oatmeal, but I love to explore different superfoods. This is a fun one too. I have organic quinoa crisps. Just a great way to add a little bit of crunch. Another thing I do have, just to show you that it's not always perfect, is every once in a while you crave something crunchy. And rather than go for salty potato chips or something that's unhealthy, I love these Wassa light and crisp crackers. I usually put tomatoes on them and sprinkle a little bit of olive oil and sea salt on top. And it's a great, simple way. They're low in calories, and they do have a pretty good blend of flours. So that's super simple. And then another thing that I like to keep in my pantry is teas. I have an entire drawer of tea, but again, sometimes you don't think about that. When you're starving or you're snacky, you tend to go to the pantry. So my favorite teas are actually from Coffee Bean, and I keep these in here too, just to remind myself that they are there. Hot sauces and salsas, another really great way to flavor up your food without making sure, or without adding a bunch of junk on top. Pretty simple. And then canned goods. So this is something that's pretty important to focus on, is when you have your canned goods, they're great for, like the beans I have for adding protein on my salad. Sometimes I'll have that as a side dish rather than have something starchy. Canned squash is another great thing, and this will be great like if you're craving mashed potatoes. Sometimes the organic butternut squash is good. And then pumpkin, I usually throw this into my smoothies, make like a pumpkin pie smoothie. I always have coconut milk on hand for soups and things like that. And of course, tomatoes for homemade sauces. That's pretty much as simple as it gets with the cans. I usually have tuna or crab meat, which I'll use, believe it or not, in sauces to help increase the protein. And then over here, I have my cooking oils. Really important to make sure that you cook with the right oils. And I'll do a whole separate blog on that. But coconut oil, the organic red palm oil, and clarified butter are the three that I cook with. And I'll cook everything in that, from my sautés to even my chicken breasts. And then I know a lot of you are probably thinking, what about my kids? What about my husband? You know, they have their staples, they have their favorites. That's okay. The key is you want your family to eat as healthy as you do. But I do understand kid food. I have a 5-year-old, and trust me, I get it. When it comes to lunches and things like that, sometimes there are things that you'll throw in their lunch that you might not necessarily eat on a day-to-day basis. And down here, I have all my son's food, and some of these things are just simple things like the cranberry bars, the fruit or cereal bars. And then I have some Puffins cereal. These are cinnamon Puffins that he eats. And then in here I have some regular pasta, which I don't tend to eat that often, but it's perfect babysitter food. So simple little things like that. In terms of my pasta, I like this, what is this, Explore Asia pasta. This is made from beans. And then I'll also use the brown rice pasta occasionally when the whole family eats pasta. But even better than that, I like to have my spaghetti squash. This is such a great substitution for pasta. My son loves it, my husband loves it, really easy. And then of course I have things like sweet potatoes underneath here as well, and onions. And fuel and energy. I tend to keep a handful in the fridge, but I don't keep all my fuel and energy in the fridge, because if I do, it goes way too fast because everybody drinks it. So I keep a handful in the fridge, and then I keep the rest of it in here. Another thing actually that I'll mention here is I like to keep miso soup on hand. I buy the concentrate at a Japanese grocery store, and then I usually have some kind of a chicken broth, because I'll use that to flavor things and to cook with as well, or just at night to have a cup of broth before I go to bed. That's pretty much the basics of it. I do have some essential oils in here, which I'll use occasionally for cooking. And then one other thing is my spices. So you'll notice you don't see condiments in here. I do have a lot of mustards, but I don't have a lot of salad dressings and things like that. Instead, I like to have my spices here. Now, I do have a separate spice rack in my kitchen, but these are the ones that I like to use just like on my chicken breast, or whenever I'm cooking fish or anything. And they're just some good blends. And then I also have more olive oil and balsamic vinegar. Love these. I stock up everywhere. And sea salt, things like that. So really, really simple, really clean. In the very back, I keep extras of, we do a gluten-free pumpkin mix every weekend. So I keep extra boxes of that. And then, of course, I have a couple German streusel mixes and things like that. Well, yeah, gotta have a few things. But the biggest thing is keep it clean, keep it organized, don't go overboard, and just, mix it up a little bit, but keep it healthy and keep those preservative and frankenfoods out of your pantry. Okay, that's it. Now it's your turn, and I wanna see your clean pantries. All right, see you later.